first rule of mass media, Elliot. Give the people what they want.
Okay, so tonight I'd like to pay tribute to who I want to argue is actually one of the best directors of recent times, and that's Michael Bay.
Michael Bay?
Michael Bay.
Okay. All right.
As we're on the verge of the latest Transformers movie being released.
Transformers 5, The Last Night.
And as awful as these movies have been, as terrible, and how disappointed I am every time I leave the theater, I have to say, though, that each time it delivers exactly what you want. And I hate saying that, but that's really what the director's job is, right? Is to give you what you want.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you can't argue that. Like, there is I don't know. There is an element of giving you what you want.
Sure.
However, the dosage of said what you want is usually minimal, but it's just enough to make you feel like you watched something.
But that's exactly it, and that's where I think the beauty of what Michael Bay does isn't just what you said there, because what he delivers to you are, I mean, you figure an average movie is what, 2.5 hours, 2 hours, maybe?
His movies tend to run long these days, so yeah, two hours plus.
Okay, so I would argue, A, that his movies run longer because he's trying to pack as much in as possible and to justify charging you almost $20 a ticket at the theater.
That's true.
It's like, you do have to deliver more nowadays.
There is an expectation, yeah.
So you combine that with the fact that it's incredibly over the top visually, to make up for the fact that you are going to a theater again. And, you know, in the era of Netflix and everybody owning a 40-inch flat screen TV at home, that's a big deal. Like, to encourage people to still go out in public and still go out and consume your content. Mm-hmm. But also, his movies, like, there's at least one memorable scene in each one. Yeah. And really, when you think about, like, with the amount of content that we consume on a regular basis in media, if you can remember one 5-minute sequence and go back and watch it on YouTube occasionally just because you like it so much, that's an accomplishment with a film.
Yeah, I mean, if I hate to always call back to this, but like if you look at my DVD shelf, like there are quite a few movies on there that you can the memories you have of them, like the chief reason for having it on your shelf essentially does usually boil down to like one major set piece moment. And you know, to be able to put that one feather in your cap does mean a lot. Like Transformers 2, I would say that's the worst movie in that franchise. It is fucking god-awful.
Yeah.
But if I say Forest Battle, you know exactly what I'm talking about because, hey, for 2 minutes, Optimus Prime was fucking badass and it was pretty cool. Little did we know that set a precedent of Optimus Prime being a murderous savage. But at the time, like as a time capsule, that 2-minute sequence was enough to make me feel like, oh, hey, that movie was shit, but that was pretty cool.
And also, like, you brought up how Optimus Prime is a murderous savage in the Michael Bay Transformers.
Oh yeah.
We're of that opinion because I agree with you completely, and I feel like that opinion is based on growing up with the classic Transformers, and for me at least, Optimus Prime was kind of like the example of how you're supposed to conduct yourself in society is. Well, yeah. You're supposed to just be this person who puts yourself beneath others and kind of, you know, always looking for the greater good, always having, you know, trying to be optimistic about the future, even though...
His name is Optimus!
Well, yeah, there you go. now that I say that out loud. But that's the whole thing is, like, I almost feel like what Michael Bay did was he took a character with that attitude, coming from an era in the 80s where it was, you know, clearly we were trying to build archetypes that don't exist. Yeah. And, you know, he's kind of taken, like, how would this character respond to our modern society?
Well, okay, a little bit of a tangent, but I feel like the problem with Optimus Prime was that he kind of had... a lot of the characters in the Transformers they're painted in broad strokes. I mean, it's an 80s toy commercial show.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I love the franchise. I grew up with it. That's not a knock. That's just simple facts. And his thing was always, he was kind of the Leonardo of the group in terms, Ninja Turtles Leonardo, where it's like he's kind of plain.
Yeah, he's just a blank, just leader.
In modern storytelling, where you don't have a weekly television show, where you just have a movie, like he got kind of distilled down to nothing, basically, where it's like his primary descriptor would be like noble or stoic.
Yeah.
He became Qui-Gon Jinn in Star Wars Episode 1. Which is to say, an Irish guy with a sword that didn't make it out of the first movie. But Optimus Prime, like he's painted in such broad strokes that I think the writers kind of hijacked the character and took advantage of the fact that he doesn't really have a character.
Yeah.
And just said, hey, let's paint him in whatever color we want right now. Like color as in like attitude or stance on issues or whatever. So it's like, oh shit, we need a big action scene. Let's have the guy who doesn't have any like emotional grounding do it.
But I would argue that that's also like, I mean, that's what Michael Bay takes his cues from, are the classic Transformers. And in the original movie, I mean, that's really all Optimus does. He shows up, he has one of the coolest sequences ever where he literally defeats the entire Decepticon army.
Yeah.
And then he dies.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like, I mean, he's given you that in every single movie, essentially. Optimus Prime shows up, he's not really involved with a lot, just kind of appears when you need him most, delivers the goods, the action sequence, the memorable scene, and you're content with that, because that's what we always want.
Yeah, but, like, the problem with that is the fact that this is a character from an established franchise.
Sure.
And you see this problem with the Star Trek movies as well. I'm not super well informed as far as Star Trek goes, but I know enough to make this argument that in like the Next Generation movies, well, in all the movies really, like the captains like Picard or Kirk, generally they're in the TV show they're portrayed as very diplomatic, very like middle of the road types, where it's like we will find the most neutral solution to this problem. It's like if we can go without intervening, then we will.
Yeah.
Kind of like Optimus Prime in the TV show, where usually he'd only interject like if Megatron was involved and was starting some serious shit or something.
This is true.
But in the movies, it's like he's turned into Action Man, and that was kind of the same problem they had in the Star Trek movies, where like Captain Picard, all of a sudden he's picking up laser guns and fighting all the time, and is bloodthirsty and has like a Captain Ahab and like a Moby Dick complex thing going on. And it's because in the context of a 2-hour movie, you got to have him do something.
Yeah.
And in Optimus Prime's case, I think that's what happened. They amped him up.
Sure.
Where it's like the quote from the TV series that they put in the first movie from him was freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Which that sums up his character. That's everything you described. He's very diplomatic. He's very stoic.
Yeah.
But that's not reflective of him at all in the movies. Like, in the movies, we will kill them all.
But I would argue that with Michael Bay, like the continuity of what he's done with his Transformers movies, it's kind of building up with the teaser trailers of The Last Knight. Kind of shows like a disenfranchised Optimus, like a guy who he came in with the ideal that you just said, like that he's this super diplomatic, super stoic, noble guy, and he's constantly being fucked over left and right, be it by humans, really, essentially. Uh-huh. And the end of the last movie, it basically was him just bugging out, going into space, because fuck everybody.
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting to track that progression, because it's been like the slowest, if the writing team is actually paying attention. I can't even tell if they are.
Yeah.
Like, if they are paying attention, it has been, like, one of the slowest character arcs I've ever seen. Where, like, at the end of the third one, there's a moment where there's even, like, a musical cue where it's like, dun dun. And it's after he's killed both Megatron and, the the letter
Sentinel Prime.
Sentinel Prime.
And that when they both had offered for peace.
Yeah, when Megatron's like, hey, you want to be bros? And he's like, no.
She blows his head off, yeah.
And then, Sentinel Prime is literally crawling away, and his last words are, no, Optimus. And Optimus Prime blows his fucking head off.
Pretty brutal.
Yeah, but immediately following those two deaths, Optimus Prime is standing, and he's looking kind of, I don't know, grizzled and pissed off. Like, he doesn't look happy, which is appropriate. And then they have this music cue where it's like, dun, dun. And you think it's going to turn to him being like you said at the end of the fourth one, like, fuck this.
Yeah.
But then they made a fourth one, and I guess he got over it. So it's like they had a hiccup or something, because that should have been the turning point where it's like, this shit is crazy, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
But no, he needed to go live in Marky Mark's farm in his shed. Marky Mark from Texas.
Hey, it's all about making money. I mean, that's the side of Michael Bay that most people knock is there's a lot of people in the art house communities who like to feel that film is this expression, and that's true. Like, there are beautiful indie films made all the time. There are great expressions where directors put their heart into it. But then, at the end of the day, too, if you want to get to where Michael Bay's at, where you can literally do whatever you want, things like Pain and Gain, to get there, you have to make money. And you have to deliver. And what he has created is this thing that it's perfectly designed for people of our age range who, we're both in our 30s now, and we're the ones who are having children.
Yeah.
And the whole point of it is that I grew up with this. I'm nostalgic for this because I liked it. Yeah. I get to drag my kid out and entertain him for 2.5 hours, but secretly it's really for me, not for them. Like, they're going to be happy as long as shit blows up. Yeah. But it's really for me. Can I tolerate? Mm-hmm. When he's delivered, he's got Mark Wahlberg, the king of all white people movies. I mean, literally, you cast him in anything, everyone's going to come out in droves to watch it.
Yeah.
I mean, he always has a great international showing that I don't think a lot of people realize.
Yeah.
But, especially, what was the last one when they're in China? I mean, you don't think that that's a move made to make money?
Well, those movies make bank in China.
Well, it's building an international audience. And that's where Transformers has always worked. I've argued this in the past, like actually our first ever podcast, that one of the appeals of Transformers is that they don't have a racial background. They don't have a religious background. They're just these blank canvases of cool robot things that can represent anybody. Yeah. So anybody, any child in any country can look up to them and think they're cool. Uh-huh. And that's a big deal when it comes to your, how you're marketing that stuff.
Yeah, any kid can look at them and project themselves into that, into that Super Friends group.
Yeah, I mean, on the contrast to that, you see another thing where what they did with the Ninja Turtles in the modern times, which was Michael Bay, I believe, produced these. But
didn't direct. It's a very important distinction to make.
Yeah, and the decision with that, like, they're trying to make them very urban, very, like, distinguish them as these characters. Or it's like, what do kids like, Kids like LeBron James, kids like skateboarding, kids like, and that's what the Turtles have always been about.
Yeah, honestly.
I mean, it's true. And because of that, you see them now, and I would argue that it seems like the Turtles are African-American based on how they're conducted in the movies.
Yeah, they're not played by African-American
Of course not.
Folks.
No.
But, they're definitely...
No, they're modeled to be like cool, hip, young African-American kids.
No, they're totally playing that angle. Like,
yeah. And that's where you see the other side of it. Because Michael Bay, I don't think he's a great guy. Like, I'm not sitting here arguing that he's a great director because I think he's a wonderful human being. Because in many ways, I think he's a piece of shit. I'm just arguing that if you were just looking at the success of a director, when it comes to financial return and being able to handle a project on the scale that these films are, that's impressive. Well, because that's where it gets complicated, is when you're dealing with filming in different locales that are international, when you're dealing with massive scale, where, you literally have to have these CGI things that are breaking technology each time. Yeah. I mean, when you're commanding egos of actors, because he had, it's not easy to get guys like Mark Wahlberg, let alone to make sure that they're happy enough to, deliver the goods.
Oh, fucking Kelsey Grammer and John Turturro.
I was just going to say, what was the one where they had all the actors from, like, all the Coen Brothers shit?
Yeah, it was throughout the franchise, they've been bringing people in left and right. It's like, whoa. hang on. These are super talented folks.
No, exactly, and they seem to enjoy themselves. They seem like it goes off without a hitch.
Well, I think that's actually maybe a hidden secret of his directing method or his skill is it seems like he invites these super talented actors into his movies, or I'm sure he doesn't. Well, maybe he does, because the Coen brothers, that is a thing. Like,
no, yeah, it was like Francis McDormand.
Francis
it was
McDormand,
like
John Turturro, John Malkovich.
Yeah, it was like watching. It was like this makes no sense. These actors are way beyond Transformers.
Yeah,
Transformers 3, I believe it was.
Well, John Turturro's been like all of them, except maybe I forget if he was in the fourth one. But yeah, I think I want to say that maybe he gives them like a level of freedom, or I don't know, he tickles them in just the right sort of way, where he gets these people to play against type in a way that maybe fascinates them or like gets them excited.
I imagine as an actor, that's like one of the appeals is constantly
especially-
being able to try on different hats. And,
Yeah, especially like a really seasoned actor or a really multifaceted one. Because one thing about John Turturro, John Malkovich, Francis McDormand, they're chameleons.
Yeah.
And John Malkovich playing I think he was doing like a bad Jewish stereotype with a bad tan and like a alpha male complex in the third one. That was a character I don't think anyone had ever asked him to do, and I'm sure that played a hand in getting him to do it.
That's true.
And same with like Marky Mark. I think just like maybe the atmosphere on the set, at least for the big name stars, is maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's fun in a way or something.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly doing something, because honestly, I would argue that on the contrast to it, the Marvel Universe, like, it really seems like the bigger the ensemble casting gets, like, the more they're just kind of phoning it in. Granted, I imagine a lot of that is just because the way it's done with so much green screen, where these actors are coming and going and only have so much time to commit to, filming a sequence.
Well, I think I don't think they're to the point of phoning it in.
Yeah.
I think the Marvel Universe is like intensely curated.
Yeah.
So I think you have people on set like continuity people or just advisors paying attention to the continuity, like managing the character portrayals so that they're consistent across different products and across time.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they have that level of attention put on the Transformers movies, especially since, all the Transformers characters are just voiceover anyway.
Yeah.
And, the human characters, the principal characters, are like a revolving door of just pointless pretty people and Shia LaBeouf.
Well, I think that's what they realized when they completely recast everything after the third one, where it's like, let's just upgrade everything and just
let's get a buff dude and say he's from Texas instead of like weird like hyperactive Shia LaBeouf that no one can relate to except for I just tripped over myself. Teenagers.
Yeah.
Pretty much every teenager.
Well, and I think that was the draw in the original 3 movies, was trying to appeal more to the kid angle. And because the first movie in particular, like, so much of that was supposed to be like the teen fantasy of your first car that turns out to be a giant robot that helps you save the universe and get the girl. Like, come on.
They even paid lip service to the Johnny from Karate Kid, like the blonde high school bully. Like,
yeah, I forgot about that.
Like, do we need to put that in there too? That Shia LaBeouf is also a nerd who gets bullied? Like,
well, and then and it kind of followed him growing up, going to college, all that stuff too. So I think they put more effort then in appealing to children. Now they just realize that special effects, that's enough. Like, really.
Well, yeah, especially when you're dealing with international audiences and stuff. It's like, let's give Marky Mark a gun and just have at it.
Well, I also wonder too, like, how much of that do you think is like an impact of like things like apps now being more important than toys? Oof. Because like the reality of it is, like, part of the reason we all loved Transformers was they were the coolest toys. I mean, when we were kids, because not only do you get to be given them and you're given this task of figuring out how it operates, the old ones, it really was, it transformed into a car or whatever. So you pretty much sat there and you pulled it apart and put it back together again. Mm-hmm. And it just had cool design, like, and then the contrast to that was like the super plasticky, shitty G.I. Joe stuff that, like,
with the rubber band in their hips, they would always tear.
Exactly. So it was just, but it just was like a good quality, great toy, and that started the love, and then the content of the movies and the TV shows that really just instilled it. But now I wonder, like, maybe the shift, like with the later Transformers movies that Michael Bay has made, maybe that's because now kids, like, they don't play with toys past a certain age. Like, they're clearly marketing these movies now to older kids. Like, I would say the 8 to 10 to 16 range, whatever, you know, like.
Oh, definitely. And
maybe that's because they're more concerned with now people downloading whatever shitty app game they'll make whenever a new movie comes out, or using the Snapchat filter with Optimus Prime's head on it, or whatever it is to continue to consume this content and put it out there, rather than just focusing on selling toys like it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought of that, actually, that physical goods are kind of on their way out in some ways. And yeah, product tie-ins, product placement in the third one for sure fourth one was gigantic. Well, all of them, but
no, all of them. I mean, the first one had like a Mountain Dew machine turned into a transformer. Like,
and all the cars were licensed vehicles. Like,
yeah,
the toys, they kind of like had some wiggle room where it's like, oh, that's not a Chevy. It was like that's not a Peterbilt truck. That's just a truck.
That's true.
But yeah, I don't know about that aspect of things, like cross media promotion and stuff like that.
See, that's the stuff where I again, it goes back to when I think that Michael Bay is a very successful director. I think it's because these are things that he mastered. I think that he understands how to market something and make something to where it has an appeal. I mean, like I said, we clearly, like, we're in an era now where people get obsessed with universes and just want to dwell in them forever. Like, you see that in gaming now. Like, it's annoying to me. Like, to me, a game, I want to pick it up, play it for a few hours, and be like, that was fun, and put it aside. But now it's so much of it's you immersed into this land where you can explore every avenue, and that's what it is when you make these giant titles where, I mean, they're releasing the 5th one. The only reason that works is because people still want to be in the universe, you know. They want to go to the theater, tune out, and be like, this would be awesome, you know.
Well, that's the thing about these Transformers movies in particular, is that I don't really know why there's demand for more, other than, you know, there's a sucker born every day. Like, in our case, it's because we have some strange obligation just because of, like, nostalgia or something.
Oh, every time I go in waiting to be disappointed.
Oh, yeah,
and every time they deliver. So
I know it's gonna suck.
Yeah.
But I still kind of want to go to see it because I want to see how it sucks. I want to understand why it sucks.
And you know there will be that 1 5-minute sequence where you actually are taken out of your seat for a moment and just be like, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, Michael Bay's very good about set pieces.
Yes.
That's actually one thing that I have to applaud him for. There's a lot of things, actually, but that's one thing that I notice, especially in terms of editing. A lot of modern blockbusters have a problem with cross-cutting between multiple events happening, like, parallel to each other.
Yeah.
His movies don't tend to do that. I mean, they do, but oftentimes there's a few big sequences in there that are allowed to breathe. And, like, in the 4th one, there's a pretty decent sequence where they're in the spaceship.
Yeah.
Like, that's in Earth's orbit. That was an interesting sequence, and it was shot creatively. Most of his movies are.
Yeah.
And, like, there was that long sequence where they're running along the cables, and that was very creative and, again, very well shot.
Yeah.
But I lost my train of thought.
Well, no. Actually, everything you just said makes sense because, like, there's so many different ways to look at filmmaking. And again, like, I think, like, both you and I, like, if we were to make a film, you would strive to be the art house, very, like, focused on tonal shift, very focused on sound cues, very focused on making a tight production that has good soul behind it. Michael Bay is the complete opposite of that. But in terms of bringing in financial return, it makes sense because he delivers things that sometimes people who are willing to put up the money for these things really demand to see. Like, you see a lot of wealthy people where they'll finance a movie and they just want to see a really badass, like, stunt done. Like, what was it? That Assassin's Creed movie was literally built around one big giant free fall stunt.
Really?
Yeah, that was like their big thing that they marketed, and clearly whoever produced this thing, that was their thing of being like, yeah, we convinced this guy to do a free fall from this 200-foot crane or whatever. Like, that was like a big deal. I remember the second Tomb Raider movie.
Yeah.
it was the big thing was the squirrel suits. It was like, oh my god, you need to see this shit. And you see like bad action movies get made constantly where there's one stunt that is like the focal point, and usually they suck because they show it in the preview, and everyone's like, okay, that's all I needed to see. Like
well, a lot of what you're talking about, it's like you kind of got me back on track a little bit. Like the filmmaking community, like there's lots of little clans, there's little cliques. And
yes,
I think Michael Bay being in his position as long as he's been, and that's one point that you were making earlier, is that think about how many directors, like numbers, like numerically, how many people have manned $100 million plus productions.
Right.
There are very few human beings who have done that.
Let alone 5 in a row.
Well, that's not even counting his earlier movies, too.
Right.
He's been doing this for a very long time. Not many people can claim to have experience doing that, let alone have done it once.
Yes.
And if you've been doing it that long, you start to develop relationships in the industry.
This is true.
With stunt people and producers.
This is also true.
And how do you make those people enthused to work on your stupid Transformers movie? You give them an opportunity to immortalize themselves. If you look at a lot of Transformers movies, like the Freefall that you mentioned, Assassin's Creed, I forget if it was Transformers 2 or 3, but it has apparently the world record for largest gasoline explosion.
Yeah.
So that's
things that
history.
that people get into.
And then, I think it was the third one that had the fatality on the set. A stunt driver was killed. Mm-hmm. But things like that come from accidents, but they also come from pushing the envelope. Mm-hmm. And that's how you make good product, though.
Yes.
Is you push the envelope. And if you have that kind of relationship with the quote-unquote underlings, like the people working beneath you, that's a sign of skill. Like
yes.
That means you're good with people. And like I said about the actors, I think maybe he has that kind of effect on people.
Well, and see, that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because like I think like going back to you were talking about like you can't comprehend why people want to occupy these universes so much like they do. And I think part of what it is, and you're seeing it with all forms of technology, is we're getting so far removed from knowing how things work that it's really just kind of a matter of like you just like tune out and you have no comprehension of all those things you just discussed. I think your average consumer of the Transformers movies in particular, like I don't think that these people consider like that you actually had to build sets or that you actually had to create something and blow it up, or that people had to drive in some of those sequences where the cars are operating and things like that. Like these are all things that like you can consider if you have a background in it. Both you and I studied film, you much more than I have. And so because of that, you have an interest in how these things are created and how these things are conducted. But most people don't approach things like that. They just kind of tune out and they say, fuck it, like, that's cool. Yeah. It's like just like any app I use on my phone. I have no fucking idea how it works. I just casually play with it.
Yeah, and technology is black magic now.
Yeah, but that's kind of like filmmaking too. It's like they don't consider that like people... Part of the reason these things continue to get financed is because maybe it's just a lot of fun.
Well, it's a lot of fun, and a lot of Michael Bay's movies have I call it gimmicks. Mm-hmm. But I mean that's not
lens flare.
Well, that's more J.J. Abrams, but yeah, Michael Bay's big on sunsets, helicopters at sunset, and the U.S. Marines.
Yes,
go America. But a lot of his movies seem like they have cinematography tricks or gimmicks, like as almost like part of like a thesis or something. Like maybe he had a conversation with his DP, and they were like, "Yeah, let's try that in this movie." And then next time it's like, let's try that. Like, Bad Boys 2 had this bizarre fixation. Yeah, Bad Boys 2. You knew it was coming. Bad Boys 2 has this odd fixation with rotating the camera.
Yes.
There's even an entire action sequence built around spinning the camera.
That's like the first sequence when they like pop out the Klan rally.
No, it's a little later.
Okay.
So there's a sequence where there's two parties having a gunfight with each other. There's Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, and then there's some bad guys on the other side of the wall. So they built this camera rig to spin around like between the two rooms so you could see both sides of the action in one shot. And that camera trick repeats throughout the movie. I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Like, Like it's kind of a hallmark of his movies where you have one or two guys standing up slowly into a sunset. The camera's rotating and it's low, so it makes them look big and badass.
Dude, the one that always gets me is the tonal shift, like, that he does, where he'll just, like, out of nowhere, it goes from just being, like, a happy-go-lucky popcorn flick to where everything gets really serious. Yeah. And, like, shit's gone down. Well, like, the second one in particular, like, the dad, when Shia's in the desert, and he's, like, decides he needs to go help.
The dad speech.
Like, the dad who literally the whole movie is just this big joke of a character and just shows up in the RV and is just, like, comic.
I don't want you to go, son!
Yeah, it just gets real serious in the music.
Let me go, Dad.
Yeah, the music. Dun, 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 dun. Like...
Yeah, and it's got the fucking Black Hawk Down Born series shaky cam.
Yeah,
like
but
Warzone.
But I'm a sucker for that. Every time that happens, I'm always get choked up.
When he says, "You gotta let me go, Dad. You gotta let me go," and I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, I'm gonna cry at a Michael Bay Transformers.
And then I think that was immediately followed by Bumblebee having an extended brawl with I think it was like a spring, like a coiled spring that was bouncing around.
I mean, less than 5 minutes later, they had testicles on a giant crawling dog robot or whatever. So, I mean...
You gotta let me go, Dad. Immediately followed by Bumblebee having a fist fight with a slinky.
Yes.
For 3 minutes, and then testicles, and then, give me your face.
No, exactly. But again, it's a matter of what are you going to take from that? Because that one sequence with the dad or whatever is forever ingrained in my head, and I will always...
I bet you didn't remember the slinky.
Not at all.
See?
And
it works.
Yeah, it was successful media in that sense, that it's memorable in some way. Yeah. And in that regard of just saying, fuck it, like, it doesn't make sense with the tone of the movie, but let's just put it in there. People do dig that.
It's a very kitchen sink way of handling your movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, honestly, but like you said, if you have a paying audience, like editing a coherent film, sometimes maybe that's not as important as just cramming everything in there.
Well, I think
because if you took out the slinky fight, somebody would be mad.
Yes.
Because Bumblebee didn't do anything in that movie.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, Bumblebee didn't do anything in that movie.
But this is what I'm talking about. Is like it appeals to all types. Like it's a very American concept of like how do we appeal to everybody all at once? It's like, well, you have things that are like, oh, this is nostalgic for this 80s slinky toy, but then you also have this very serious like father-son moment, and you also have Optimus Prime, doing Optimus Prime things. You have
Optimus Prime with rocket boosters tearing people's faces off.
Yes, but
and he ditches the rocket boosters, just cuts.
But that's like another strength that I think Bay has as an American filmmaker in particular is that like he has a certain level of almost like tackiness about him that lends itself to just kind of like having a fun production that I think there are a lot of people in America that especially like that's how they view movies is they just want to not think for 2.5 hours and tune out.
The whiz-bang factor is not to be discounted.
No, I mean, like, he'll forever be tacky in my eyes after hearing the Megan Fox crap about, how he, like, had her wash his cars in a bikini or where to get the role and transform. Granted, it's Megan Fox, but it's like...
that always lingers in my mind. And then there's also... What's really interesting about him is he has zero public presence.
Oh, no, other than beating up a guy with an air conditioner unit who was apparently a member of the Triads in China, but... Yeah,
he's like... I don't know. He's done very well to stay out of the public eye. Like,
yes.
I don't know much about him as a human being, to be honest, and I think that's by design.
I agree completely.
Where he doesn't take authorial ownership of these products, like they're products to him. It's like I made this because they told me to.
And this is 100% going back to exactly why I think that he's a great filmmaker in that regard, because he's all about making the money and. I mean, because again, it's about making money. Yes, you can be an artist as a filmmaker, and you can build a very successful life. There have been plenty of them who have done it, and there will be many in the future. And
Brett Ratner.
Yeah. But that being said, like there will always be those that it's just about the business of how do we convert, people's viewership into money.
Well, and on time, on budget,
yes,
and in the green is that being able to tell that to a producer consistently.
That's what I mean. He's a CEO of filmmaking, essentially. Yeah. Like, he's just a person that, if you're running a company, that if you're just looking at for profit, he's the kind of person you want. You don't want him to be this, grandstanding like Quentin Tarantino figure who like everything's about me, like I did this for this reason, I was inspired by this for that.
Yeah.
Like I think one of the things that the appeal to an actor is when you can show up and the guy just seems like he's just like, do whatever you want.
Yeah, I think actually that kind of slapdash editing style, I think that's a product of that, where it's like he doesn't take ownership of the movie.
Yeah.
In fact, like what little I do know about him, he does seem kind of nihilistic. Like he kind of shits on
Pain and
everyone.
Gain, I think
Yeah,
is.
I think he doesn't have high hopes for humanity.
And that's also that supports my argument for with the Optimus Prime thing too. Like I think that was his little dig. I was like, I'm going to take this noble figure and turn him into a murderous
we will
prick.
kill them all.
Like, and nobody's going to care because they're just happy to see him blow shit up. Like,
It's like I challenge your condemnation of this character with, did you have fun? Yes, you did. So shut up.
yes.
But I think the slapdash like editing style where it's just like everything we got. Like
Yeah.
I think that's reflective of maybe how he gets his personal enjoyment out of the process. Where like I said, like we were saying about like pushing the envelope with stunts and visuals and all that stuff. It's like his enthusiasm has always seemed to center around visuals.
Yes.
Like shots, not storytelling, not characterization, just shots.
Yes.
Putting the camera in interesting places, moving it in interesting ways.
Yes.
And I think maybe that's how he gets his jollies, where it's like, yeah, I'm making this product, like I'm making a goddamn toy commercial, but goddamn it, I'm gonna do some silly shit with the camera and have a good time.
Yes.
So it's like that's how he keeps his soul, I guess.
Well, and he just has that view of the world that's the very wealthy white guy of like, let's make this one Japanese. Let's make this one British.
Shit.
Then all the people in London will like it. And all the people in Japan will like it.
Another Coen brothers, John Goodman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot he was in the fourth one.
Yeah, I love John Goodman.
John Goodman elevates every production he's in.
No, but it was like very much like those stereotypes. Like he very, plays to that.
Well, yeah, they played up the toyetic aspect of the character design in the fourth one for sure. Like they were color coded for once.
Yes.
It's like for once in the fucking Transformers franchise, they color code the characters.
No, and then
the blue guy's the Japanese one, and the green one's I don't really know, but he's maybe interesting, maybe down the line. And then the fat one's John Goodman, because of course.
Yeah, and then we had in the first one you had Jazz who was doing breakdancing moves and
Yeah. Sup, little bitches.
And then
First line in the movie.
Yep, and then
Your favorite.
Yep.
your favorite Transformer.
And then the second one had the two brothers
the
with the
twins.
gold tooth and So I mean, this is why I think he's a piece of shit as a human. Just like very much with the Megan Fox thing, where it's like very much like essentially you're sending the message to the person who wants to be in your movie that you are going to be an object.
Yeah.
And that's literally how he's treated all the females in the movies, with the exception of like Frances McDormand or whatever. But
they didn't even bother to hire an actress for the third one. They got a model.
Yeah, and it worked fine because
she did better than Megan Fox. like I thought she was a little bit better in terms of characterization.
And she's probably more comfortable with that whole notion of just clear. You're not here to talk.
Well, I mean, it's pretty bad when. Well, fuck. I think both of them were their introductory shot in those movies was just right up the ass. Just like I'm gonna stick a $1 million camera up your ass.
I think it was. I remember reading the film reviews of the third one where they were saying where it goes from literally the moon landing to a butt. And it's like
it goes from the moon landing to a Meatloaf music video featuring this lady's ass.
Yeah, it's like.
And it even had the blowing curtains, the thin white curtains. They just need some candles and Meatloaf with some eyebrow makeup.
No, and this is like he's a tacky individual. Like he very much is.
How do you put asses in seats?
Yes.
Literal ass puts asses in seats.
No, exactly, and that's what's so fascinating with film is like you have two ends of the spectrum. You have the one who will, filmmakers who will combat that forever and say like this is garbage. We need to change society, and then you have the more conservative side that's just like, what do people like?
Yeah, then you have the more conservative side that's thinking about the numbers and understands that, yes, I can get people to see Chuck and Larry by showing Jessica Biel in underwear holding her breasts.
Yeah, and it's worked. It's worked for years.
Chuck and Larry!
It's worked for years, and it will continue to work. And like I said, in terms of making money, Michael Bay is a great filmmaker in that regard. Like, he just has embraced that and just goes with it. And, you know, we're still going to pay money to see it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny, like, thinking about his movies beyond the Transformers movies. Like, The Rock is the one that always... I'm trying to think of, like, the equivalent of what The Rock is.
The sex sequence in The Rock is one of the most awkward things.
Yeah, it's like, hang on, she's sitting on his... Oh. Like,
well, and she has, like, angel wings on, and they're, like, in a hammook on a rooftop.
On a roof.
With him playing a guitar. It's
yeah,
just...
It's like, hang on, she's not just sitting on him. I think, It's like, this is weird.
And it's Nick Cage O-face, so it's, like, just, like, the most awkward thing you can imagine.
Well, it was Nick Cage when he had abs for 5 minutes. It was Cameron Poe Nick Cage.
Not CGI abs like he had in Ghost Rider.
Oh, God, that was so bad. But, like, I'm trying to think of what The Rock is. It's what I'm trying to say is The Rock is the gimme. It's the one movie in the guy's filmography that it's Happy Gilmore and Billy Madison to make the Chuck and Larry connection. It's the Happy Gilmore Billy Madison in the sense that, I hate that Adam Sandler guy. He makes Chuck and Larry and Little Nicky and all that shit. But he did Billy Madison.
Yeah,
Happy Gilmore.
that's a
Michael
perfect...
Bay, it's like, I hate those Transformers movies and that fucking Island movie that no one saw. Oh, he's a piece of shit. But he made The Rock.
That's actually a perfect comparison, because that's exactly... Adam Sandler's been writing that forever.
I've heard that come out of people's mouths so many times, where they shit talk Adam Sandler so much, and then somebody in the room chimes in and says, but...
Well, and Adam Sandler, too, like, I would argue he's very much in that same boat, because he still makes boatloads of money off of, like, his Netflix stuff like that now.
God, yeah, he makes bank.
And a lot of that is just because he just delivers the same thing. He's consistent, and sometimes that's all people want. I mean, that's America. I mean, like, we like our big brands, and we like knowing, like, if I'm buying a Pepsi off the shelf, it's going to be a goddamn Pepsi.
It's going to be a goddamn Pepsi.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad, but that's the corporate culture of this country is very much that, and people consume their content the same way. A lot of time, people just want to see giant robots blow shit up.
Well,
and
it's that assurance.
Yes.
It's knowing that name brand counts for something.
Yes, like I put my money towards something to get back what I expect.
Yeah, it's like if you were to call a movie Robots Fighting.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Pacific Rim, which did not make very much money in this country.
Yeah.
So, for example, Pacific Rim, it's like it doesn't have the branding of Transformers. Transformers sustains itself on the fact that it is Transformers, that it makes a promise and it follows through.
Yeah.
Every time.
Well, and the other thing with it too that I mean has to be mentioned is it's so pro-America, which I mean
military subsidy.
No, honestly, like that's a big thing too, because now you can't be. It came from that era, the '80s, like we were describing, where it was everything was this image of what people wanted America to be, but it wasn't true. And
like, hang on, where are all the black people?
Yeah, exactly. like,
oh wait, they're not in the picture.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the '80s to me. And then
like, where's that Motown Records? Like, oh, it didn't come into the picture till later.
Yeah.
Like,
no, but then it's like you look at like now, and it's like it's not as popular to kind of be this. Well, maybe it is based on the political climate, but but that's what I mean though. Is like Transformers is made for Middle America. It's made for the South. It's made for these places that have this more conservative leaning, where it is like fuck it, love it or leave it attitude. Versus,
I can't emphasize enough. Marky Mark from Texas.
Yeah.
The most Boston person on the planet besides John Cena and Ben Affleck.
But then you also look at like the car worship aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like, people in the big cities, all we're looking at is like saying like we want self-driven cars and monorails and things like that to improve efficiency.
And we have nowhere to drive.
And then you get outside the city and it's nothing but big trucks guzzling gas and fucking, all this shit. Or like, people driving Camaros and crap like that. And it's like, why the fuck would you do that? You spend so little time in your car. But no, there's actually a huge portion of people that still love that shit.
Well, and you know, some parts of the country have nothing but space where you actually can drive those monster machines and actually do things with them.
Yeah, or have fun with a sports car.
Yeah,
or,
and, you know, the whole NASCAR contingent is a real thing that doesn't even touch where we live.
Yeah.
But it's gigantic.
Yes. And just like the whole notion of preserving this image that, like, no matter what occurs, somehow America will be safe because, you know, well, you know, in the Transformers universe, because we have the Transformers apparently are fighting terrorists for us, but that is kind of that very military, like, supported concept of, like, you're in America, you're safe. Like, value this because other parts of the country or the world, that's not the case. Like, you know.
Again, Transformers 2, the worst one, they had them fighting Al-Qaeda.
That's why, like, they're fighting terrorists, they're fighting, you know, aliens for you, they're fighting anything.
They're on, you know, they're part of the team.
Yeah, no, if they continue to make them, you know, they'll have, like, them combat the war on drugs or whatever, too, somehow. Like,
oh, fuck. Well, what's interesting is, like, as you were talking, I was thinking about the main characters and how they've approached the Go America thing from multiple angles and kind of, I don't know, bizarre ways, actually, where it doesn't quite make sense, but again, slapdash style doesn't need to make sense.
Well,
because it started out with Shia.
Yeah.
Who is initially high school dorky kid who, you know, okay, any high school dork can project themselves onto him. Then second one, he's college dorky kid. Okay, yeah. Any dorky college kid can relate to that. And then third one, he's post-college dorky kid. Any post-college dork can relate to that. And they even had a whole big sequence where he's looking for a job.
But my counter to that is throughout all that you had Josh Duhamel,
who's the guy solving the problem?
Tyrese, who are the guys preserving the lifestyle of this dorky kid, where he's not contributing a lot and he's kind of obnoxious and that's middle America loves that shit.
See, that's what I meant by strange angles. Right?
Yeah.
So you have this guy who's allegedly your main character.
Yeah.
I can't really say because the movies are edited in such garbage manner that I can't quite tell what they're trying to tell me. All I see is lights with sound. But so you have Shia in his young person character arc, and then every single time, like, the actual plot resolution comes as a result of the efforts of big giant robots and the military.
Yep.
And it's the hard-ass military guys who, I think Josh Duhamel has a line in the first one where the first time, second or third time seeing a robot, because he got attacked in the desert. In San Francisco, at the end of the first one. That took a long time to say. Like, I think he, like, picks up a buddy and he says, let's go kill these things. And then they go kill these things.
But that's, like, very much that, like, you know, just hard work, grit, middle America attitude of, you know, just...
Well, yeah, but it allows...
Very Christian, very, like...
It's oh my God, the way I'm thinking about this, it's maddening. It's like, it really is throwing everything at you at once, where it's like, I'm sure there's people in the audience who hate Shia LaBeouf, don't give a shit every time he's on screen. But, oh wait, Josh Duhamel's there, so now I like him. Oh, and
he's saving the annoying twit.
Yeah, but then you have the people who are like, "Oh, Josh Duhamel's boring. I don't like his stupid faux hawk." and then it's like, "Oh, but wait, there's robots. Oh wait, there's a black guy who does things occasionally." And there's that kid from the Christmas Story.
Well, and then it goes beyond that too, like you were just talking about, like in the last movie where you had Kelsey Grammer, where it's, even though we're saying these movies are pro-America, technically in the last one it's very anti that, with Kelsey Grammer's character killing all. But that also plays to that pro-America thing where nobody trusts the politicians. Everybody hates the guys behind the scenes who are calling the shots. Like, you know, people love the conspiracy shit. That's how we got fucking Trump in the office.
Because the conspiracy is real. Where the Transformers movies, every single one of them has like a National Treasure style, like, oh, it was hidden in plain sight all along.
Or like just the government knew all along and did nothing. The Dam
has housed Megatron since day one. Oh my God, the pyramids have housed a doomsday device. Oh wait, in the second one, we have a railgun. Because those exist. And then the third one, Francis McDormand is trying to deport the fucking Transformers.
No, exactly, but that goes back to that whole don't trust the government. They don't have your best interests in mind. You need the grit of good American soldiers who just do...
I'm hurting my brain trying to, like, track all of this because you need to understand people. All of these things are happening in the same movie, and you're expected to follow it and understand
the shotgun approach, though, to appealing to the
really
masses,
is.
and
It
that's
really
what he
is.
does. Is he literally appeals to everyone?
Oh my god, you're right. He is a genius.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're right. Where it's like I hate that kid. Oh, I like that guy. Oh, I hate that guy. Oh, I like that robot.
Well, I mean, McDonald's has been on my brain because I watched the movie The Founder.
Oh,
That's
okay.
kind of the complete opposite of what Michael Bay does. And I love that movie. But it makes you think of, like, the McDonald's we grew up in is literally the epitome of what Michael Bay does. It's like every single detail in that place has been so thought out and so uniformed and so just, like, done in a way where, I mean, you had the visuals, which were all done to, you know, apparently reds and yellows make you hungry. You had, you know, it down to like the hard plastic seats and the inside of the restaurants to ensure people don't stick around very long time. They just like are in and out. You had the play pits. You had all the toys they offer. Like this thing was so overly thought out to the point where it's just like this disgusting mass appeal like thing that like is anything to anybody. Like, you know, some people love it because it's casual. Some people love it because, you know, they have all this weird sauces and shit. I don't fucking know. It's meant to just appeal to like everybody, which is so weird when you compare it to just like a tiny bistro down the road where it's like, we're gonna put some art up, we're gonna do this. Like that's what a restaurant is, but you know.
It's kind of interesting. It's almost like a fusion reactor or like a meme or something where it's self-sustaining, where it's like the answer to the question I had earlier is like who gives a shit about these Transformers movies anymore? Like who is asking for more? It's like the answer is somebody, because it exists and it perpetuates itself by existing.
Yeah.
And like you said about games and stuff, it's a well, by the way, the description of McDonald's, it's like Moneyball before there was Moneyball.
Essentially, I mean, it's putting finance above class.
Yeah.
It's to 100%. Like, and
But
in this country, it works. So
but the thing you were saying about games and like universe, like inhabiting universes, I think, I mean, I hate to always bring this up, but like the internet and Wikipedia and things like that, I feel like it stems from that where you have the ability to ask.
yes,
Data is collected and stored in you know many places. It's very, very accessible for anyone on the planet. So if you watch the Transformers movie, if I watch Transformers 4 and this nondescript alien spacecraft shows up, that was probably designed by somebody just, you know, on a lark, and Michael Bay pointed it and said, "I like that one." I was like, "Why?" Because it's got cables.
yeah,
I'm sure there's a Wikipedia entry for that spaceship that goes into all sorts of details as to how it functions and where it comes from, who owns it, all that shit, because somebody asked. And a lot of times I think you have situations with these universes where the only reason these details are even considered and thought out is because someone asked.
yeah,
And if not because there was an ask, because they have to assume that someone will. And so it's like, oh, there's vegetation on this alien planet. Oh, we better like think of a reason for that existing, or think of a name for it, because someone's gonna want to know.
Well, and actually, going along with what you're saying, like I think that, like I remember back when Snakes on a Plane came out, and that was like the big thing where it was like that was the first movie where like the internet kind of made it.
Yeah.
Like it really was like a phenomena where it was such a dumb idea that people just collectively got on the internet and started talking things up, and because of that, based on all those opinions, they made a lot of changes and made it into a successful film. You know, Transformers, like, because it's an established franchise, has done that, a masterful job of doing that, where they have withheld things specifically knowing that it's going to get all the fanboys up in arms. And if you look at it, and there's 5 films now, each one delivers just a little snippet of that fan lore that is so important to include, you know, be it the death of Optimus Prime, the Dinobots. I mean, Dinobots didn't show up till the 4th one. Like, I mean, that's intentional. That's done because you always got to keep them asking for more. You always need to keep them in suspense. And that builds to it, too. I mean, we've been discussing. Like, you still have Unicron to do. That's the big one. But
I mean, it took 5 movies to get Hot Rod. It took what, 2 seasons to get Hot Rod in the cartoon?
Yeah, but these are all important things that if you don't include it with the total package, like, the fanboys will be up in arms. But you got to keep them up in arms, because if you give them everything they want, it's going to peter out. I mean, the alternative is, look at what they did with Batman, where I feel like with the Batman series, like, they made those 3 movies, and it was too good to where now anything you deliver, it's going to be just a cash grab, and people know it, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Dark Knight movies, part of... I'm kind of alone in thinking this. Like, well, not alone, but I really appreciate endings.
Yeah.
Like, I love the idea of a complete thought, and that's what those movies did.
Yes.
They did what they needed to do. The third one didn't necessarily have to happen, but it did, and they tied everything up in a neat little package, and it's done.
Yeah.
But unfortunately now we live in an era where everybody wants more and more and more, and I don't have Netflix. I'm always kind of bitching about Netflix because I mean it's a really broad assumption, and it's unfair, and I don't want to be that guy, but I feel like sometimes things like that, like having access to everything at once, it creates like lazy consumption habits.
Oh, it totally does. And actually, it's the problem with it is you don't have access to everything at once, and that's my issue with it.
That's what really bothers me is the idea that you're relying on this service to provide you with content, knowing full well that you're getting a sliver of what's out there.
Well, it's the whole debate. My friend asked me this, and it's a profound question, and there's no answer to it really. But with the era of self-driven cars, these things are all going to be programmed, and they can be programmed to keep you away from certain things. Mm-hmm. And what kind of things is society going to hide as a result of, these self-driven cars that can conceivably avoid specific parts of the country permanently?
Yeah.
And I mean, just looking at the city of Seattle and the terrible homeless situation downtown, that's a perfect example of something where you could conceivably funnel all of these masses, these poor suffering masses, into a district and totally keep people away from them in their daily commutes. And as with not acknowledging they exist, that fades away and they're gone, and that's an awful glib way to look at society, but it's very much the same thing how I view content too. It's with Netflix. It's like, if you distill it down to where I'm paying for a service, so I'm going to use it.
Yeah, because you're paying.
Yeah. But if you're only giving me what you have and you continue to produce your own stuff because there's a higher margin there.
Well, not only what you have, but what you think I want.
Exactly. And that's where it gets problematic, because you're right. After a while, why would I bother to go out to a video store? Why would I bother to go out and buy things? Why would I be seeking out new content when I have this constant refreshing system of, you might like this based on your, searches or whatever.
For example, hey, you watched the first 4 Transformers movies. Would you like to watch the 5th one? It's like, yes.
Yeah, but that goes back to that whole making money thing, because that's the type of foresight that things like people like Michael Bay are aware of saying, like, you realize if we make 5 of these, the amount of licensing money we're going to make and the amount of times we can have this aired at TBS at 4 a.m. and somebody's going to watch it.
And I hate to say it, but like the editing style and the scripting, like, that's not as much a liability when you're playing to audiences that don't necessarily speak the language of the actors.
No, not at all.
Like, I just want it to look cool.
Well, and going back to it too, like that frantic sort of pacing and everything, like, lends itself to like things like streaming or more specifically like flipping around the channels, where if you see it's on and you stop on it, you're gonna stick around. Versus,
yeah, I mean, just the camera work alone, it's so frantic and all over the place, and the visuals are... Michael Bay is very good with visuals. Like, he makes things look interesting. Yeah, it does play very well to a stop and start viewing.
Well,
you can start and stop anywhere and be entertained.
It's the Rocky IV. Like, it's no, it's true. Like, that's a perfect example of something where, like, if that's on TV, you're gonna stop on it because no matter what, within 3 minutes, there's going to be some memorable sequence.
Yeah, I mean, they had 2 training sequences back to back.
It's like, how often do you watch that one versus how often do you watch the first movie?
Exactly.
Which is a brilliant film, but it's slower, it's more, You know, it has a very distinct voice that if you're not in the mood for it, you're not going to enjoy it.
It asks you to pay attention, and like it has serious moments.
Yeah, you have to think about society and the world you live in, and
fourth one, it's like, hey, James Brown, oh my God, one of the most important characters of the series just died. Oh, we're at a press conference. Oh, we're in Russia. Oh, 2 training sequences. Oh, we fought. America won. Oh, I had a good time.
Communism's dead.
Communism's dead. Movie over. I'm happy. It's like,
no, but that's.
Would you like to watch the 5th one? Fuck no.
But if you're a fan who's just getting introduced to this, which is what I'm talking about with the Transformers stuff, like there's always children being born, new people who are going to at some point be discovering this content for the first time, and you get them hooked on the first one, and if they're, like you said, the next thing that's going to say is, would you like to watch 2?
Yeah.
And if you liked it, of course you are.
It's like, yeah, is Bumblebee in it? It's like, I like the yellow one. It's like, oh, the yellow one's in all of them?
Yeah, and he continues to have a bigger role and get cooler. And
man, that would suck if you were a little kid and Jazz was your favorite.
You mean? Yeah, well, I was an older kid and he was my favorite, and I watched him embarrass himself to get ripped in half. That was totally cool.
He was the only one that died. That sucked.
It was awful. But important, too. Like,
the black robot died.
Of course.
That's like such a slap in the face. It's like, yeah, I know it's a trope. Fuck you.
Well, they made up for it, right, with the 2 twins that speak Ebonics and had gold teeth.
Hey, the twins, what's really sad about the twins is that, if you remember, they're integral to the plot.
They were. And then,
They uncovered that one secret chamber or whatever, and then they basically had a hand in beating Devastator.
They did. And then you also had the RC units, the female robots. The only time we had female.
Oh my God, they dumped that idea.
Were so so like nondescript and so boring. Like they just appeared, were immediately half of them were killed, and then they just were gone.
Yeah, wow, that was like the most half-hearted attempt at RC. We don't need RC.
I mean, these movies are very, very white. Very.
Oh, yeah.
And I think honestly, like, I don't want to delve into this because I don't have enough insight, but I will say on the record that I do think one of Michael Bay's selling points is that he's a non-Jew in Hollywood. Which is one of those horrible, awful things, but that's reality. I mean, that's always been a point of contention in Hollywood, and, he very much makes something for a very broad white audience, which is America.
What's really funny about that, and I do agree, is the 4th one is like the most pro like middle America movie out of the whole series, because like Shia LaBeouf kind of seems like he comes from like a wealthy background and like fancy part of San Francisco, I think.
Well, and if I recall, Spielberg had a hand in producing the first like
Shia
one at least, and he was huge on Shia.
Yeah, he had a thing for Shia LaBeouf.
Who's Jew,
member of the tribe. Hey, we can say that. We're honorary members.
Yeah,
but the 4th one, like it's strange how it would have that angle again, shotgun. But it would also be the most pro-Chinese, pro-international movie. But it's like cut straight down the middle, where the first half is like Texas, America, China, Shanghai.
Yeah,
it's like a Marky Mark in that. He's an inventor. He's a self-made inventor who invents shit. And is friends with T.J. Miller for reasons.
He works on cars. Who the fuck works on their own car anymore?
He works on cars. And
you have cars that go to the shop on their own now and get oil changes while you're at work. Like, why the fuck would you be learning how to change your oil and shit like that?
No, like, he's an aspiring inventor. He's a single parent. He has a big fancy house that is being foreclosed. I don't know how he got that big fancy house. Maybe his wife was a doctor or something, but she's not in the picture anymore. And then,
the guy who's dating his daughter drives like stunt cars or something like that.
He's like a
rally cars.
He's like a stunt rally car driver from.
He jump kicked somebody in the head with a car tire. I mean, for fuck's sake.
But then he's like. He's Irish or something, so it's like that gives Marky Mark even more incentive to hate him. Where it's like, you're from a different place, and then the whole like, I'm totally not raping your daughter because Cinderella laws or whatever.
Yeah, that was a really awful,
I don't know where that
awkward
came from.
thing. That
Why did they kill T.J. Miller in that movie? That was when you talk about weird tonal shifts.
Yeah.
They go from exciting car chase where it's like, oh my god, Optimus Prime's revealed, and then stuff's happening, and then silly car stunts, and then T.J. Miller, like the funniest, silliest man on the planet, gets fucking turned to ash.
Well, I will argue though that like in order to make memorable movies, you do have to have death of good people.
Yeah.
I mean, Disney's been milking that one forever with their animated films,
Bambi's mom.
but beyond that, like I would say, like because you look at it, like and actually, like I think it's the third one is just downright cruel at one point when they kill off like the old professor robot.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like they brutally just like shoot him up and like torture him, like and
he's executed.
Yeah, like, but it's like drawn out, and it's actually very disturbing.
Well, it's especially disturbing because the character designs in these movies are horrible.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of the few Transformers to have like a extremely humanoid face.
Yeah.
That moves in a way that humans
right,
do.
And he had facial hair or whatever.
Yeah, like he looked, he had a face. Like,
yeah.
He wasn't like Optimus Prime with the shield up. Like he had goofy teeth and eyes that looked like humans. He even had irises. And then he's like, I think he was like kneeling, like they execute him, like you would do in front of a crowd or something. And yeah, that whole movie has like a dark tinge to it. That's a little weird.
No, but it's like it is. I actually think it's responsible in certain ways because you're dealing with these wartime scenarios, and it's like if you have these sequences where nobody dies on the good guy's side.
Well, I mean, we used to talk about that when we were little kids with G.I. Joe. It's like, even as little kids, it looks silly when the tank blows up, but you get to see the guy jump out right before every single time.
Well, it's just irresponsible because it creates this Call of Duty mentality that I think is a bad thing of just people believing. Like, everybody who's pro-military at some point, we grew up in a military household, so we definitely had those wartime fantasies when you're growing up. And in those... It's all a sequence in like a Call of Duty game. You just rush through, everything's fine, you're safe for whatever reason. But, for whatever reason, you're totally okay. People die all around you, but,
Like, yeah, I know.
And it's, I don't know if I'm conveying that probably. My point is really that it's like, if you don't show that good people die in war too, like it really just becomes creates this really disturbing perspective on society, or on just, international relations.
When you're talking about like demographics and core audiences, I think that's a huge part of it. These movies are financed by the military in a big way,
right?
And I can't help but think that the target audience also happens to be service people, where it's when you think about not just people in the military, but their families. Like there are so many people in the military that they have kids.
Yeah.
And that kid has to grow up knowing, oh, hey, Dad does a job that's like that. That Dad doesn't want to take me to a movie knowing full well this is complete bullshit. Like it would be a bad lesson to convey to the families of that person.
Well, and that's a fascinating point, actually, because that's actually goes back to the Transformers. Like, when we were kids, like, so much of the debate our parents had to deal with was, what content do you allow your kids to take? Like, I actually didn't get to watch G.I. Joe as a kid. I know you saw it later on, but like I didn't.
That was when
it wasn't allowed in the house because it was like, because literally our dad was in Vietnam and the country was so upset over that whole thing. You saw all the protests and everything, how that changed things. And the 80s kind of represented this more conservative going back to like more this pro-America thing and trying to reestablish everything. And in the course of doing that, like, they were pushing out these things that were essentially recruitment tools. And that was why our mother wouldn't allow us to watch it, because she's like, I don't want you getting caught up in this very pro-America fervor of, you'll be safe, you can join the military, we'll give you benefits, blah, blah, blah. Because the actuality of it is, like, it's a dangerous fucking job. It's scary as shit. Like, you can live on eggshells because at any moment you don't know what could happen, Even if you're not in combat. even if you're just fucking pushing paper, you still do not know at any given moment you could get called into service and do something.
Yeah.
You know, that's the reality of what the military does. And, you know, it's a necessary thing, but, and I'm sure, even things just for morale of being able to see like a realistic, like real military trained people in operation alongside Transformers.
Yeah.
It's dorky, but it's one of those things that, like, at the very least, you can watch and be like, yeah, I did that training, or yeah, that's accurate. Those are the guns those guys would be issued. Or...
Well, yeah, I mean, all the movies. Well, it's basically impossible to make an action movie these days, especially one based in the military, without having advisors on set.
Yeah.
And most of the extras are people just off duty or retired or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's a massive cultural shift. Or I think I mentioned this a long time ago. Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
Mel Gibson and Danny Glover carrying their pistols. Like, Danny Glover should not hold guns. Like, I'm not even like a gun guy, but like the man just looks really uncomfortable. He looks like he's, I don't know, he looks like he's got like his keys and he's like trying to find his car or something. But
then you contrast that with John Wick and John Wick 2, where
and everything's done properly by the book and it looks as it should. Because
even when it's awkward at times.
And I think a lot of that comes from living in wartime. Like, you grow up, you see the news, you see that's what it looks like. That's what dad or whoever, that's what they look like when they're on the street running around with their equipment.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like Mel Gibson with his power mullet, like holding a pistol with one hand and doing all sorts of flips and stuff.
Well, I think it's also in response to, I mean, all those shitty action movies that we hold so dear to our hearts starring European men where like Commando, like we were talking about earlier, just the sequence in the mall where it's like he literally runs around, picks up a whole telephone booth, throws it, like
casually,
like tears off a car door, like no problem.
He's too big to fit in a normal car, so he needs to tear the seat out.
Yeah, it's just this larger than life portrayal, and it worked because it was just fun fantasy for us. But that's us. We weren't the old curmudgeon guy who looks at that and be like, that couldn't happen.
Yeah.
And clearly the internet's taught us that that's a larger part of the populace than it should be, of people just shitting on things because that's not accurate.
No,
wrong.
I think in general it's just a sign of just the audience being more educated.
Yeah, of course.
It's harder to get away with bullshit than ever before. And,
that's a thing.
I think in the case of the Transformers movies, though, it's actually a chief part of the aesthetic of the film. Michael Bay has a background in advertising, and those Be All You Can Be commercials look stunningly similar to a lot of the rollout scenes of the military guys in the Transformers movies.
I think too, one of the things that maybe we don't focus on as much of it. You mentioned advertising, but so much of like what like Middle America in particular really get behind are like these old cultural values of things like cheerleading and like super positive attitudes about things, and just like this perpetual belief that everything's great and glorious and wonderful. And I mean, I don't know, like I have a difficult time buying into shit like that. I just think that there's always two sides to everything. And,
absolutely.
But there are a large part of the population that's just how they approach things. It's like, the boss said this, so I'm going to do this. Or, the government said this, I'm going to do this. Or, we have a football team, so our football team's the best. I mean, there are a lot of people that's just how my religion's better than your religion. Because
why? Because it's mine.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, very much I think that's another thing that Transformers does. Like, America's always the best, military's the best.
I think, like, in lieu of, like, a unified cultural tradition for the whole country, like for instance, like Japan, like, they have a unified history, basically, except for a few minor ethnic groups and stuff. Here, it's like, we're so all over the place. It's like, you really just have, like, my grandpa said it was right, so therefore it's right. Like, it's like, my dad did it, my grandpa did it. That's all I got. So it's like,
well, and also too, like when you're in particular, not to beat up on Middle America, but when you are in areas where there's less opportunity, I mean, that's kind of the other thing. You people have a tendency to double down on what they have.
Yeah,
it's like, if this is all I have, if my only opportunity is to work for Walmart or BP or whatever, like, God damn it, that's good enough.
Yeah, god damn it, I'm gonna be all in on Walmart.
I mean, it's one of the largest companies in most states in this country for a reason. I mean,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
and yeah, but that is like people have to buy in that mentality to, otherwise you're just going to fall into a deep depression and it's going to be awful. And you see that in the cities all the time where there's so much opportunity that people fall into a deep depression because they're like, oh, I'm not doing enough with my life. But then the contrast is like, you only got a few opportunities, so god damn it, it's the best thing that there is. So, I mean, at the end of the day, Michael Bay. Have I convinced you? Is he a great director or is he just a good salesman?
I think he's a skillful director in some ways. He's an expert salesman, though.
Yes.
I think he's your man if you want to get something done on time, on budget, and make a profit.
Yeah.
And sadly, it seems like he is, well, not sadly, but it seems like he's perfectly content to live that life.
Yeah, I mean, I would really, really, really be curious now, because apparently this is the last Transformers he's making.
As far as I understand, yeah.
I mean, there's a very, very good chance that he'll get a Godfather offer and make more. I'm sure that's not out of the realm of possibility, but I would really like to see, because I think that he's earned a place now where he could literally do anything he wants.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's huge, too, from an artistic standpoint, because there's something to be said for the guy who just does the job. I mean, that is admirable in a lot of ways. I mean, I could say I've worked for the same company forever doing the same shit. And, you know, I do that every day. I get through my day-to-day life believing that someday that's going to pay off, you know. And I'm sure, even though his is on a much grander, larger scale, it's a similar thing. Like, because he's essentially bought the freedom to make whatever movie he could ever imagine. He can make his masterpiece. We don't know. And that's what I'm curious about, because he's just done everything that's asked of you as a director. He makes you money, it's on time, and he guarantees you a return, you know. So I'm very fascinated about his future and what he takes, if he takes advantage of this opportunity, or if he just is content to ride off in the sunset in his mansion and his nice cars. And
it's funny, like, looking over his filmography. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but just like thinking of the big ones that come to mind, it's like, I mean, there's some thematic, like, thesis running through a lot of them, but at the same time, there's really not. like you can't really tell what direction he would go. Like, Pain and Gain stands out as, like, probably the lowest budget, like, most personal seeming movie of his filmography. But I don't know, because he has such little public presence that I don't know what he thinks. I don't know what tickles him. I don't know if Anthony Anderson was playing up his blackness because he was asked to or because he wanted to. I don't know the answers to these questions.
This is true.
Because he's a cipher. He's a fucking sphinx. Like, I bet if you tried to interview him, he'd do like he did at that tech conference and just walk off the fucking stage.
I think Pain and Gain gives you insight into who he is. Like, I think that he has a very, like you said, I think he has a very glib outlook on humanity, because I think he's just dealt with, between advertising and movies, I think he's just dealt with so many fake surface level people that's how he just sees the world. Like, he doesn't have a need for depth in things because he doesn't really believe that most people possess it. And, you know, as a result, he makes these movies that literally can appeal to every person in the country all at once. Because he just, you know, he doesn't really consider that there are thoughtful people out there, or that there are people that demand more than that, you know. I think he just has this very dark image of, like, the characters in Pain and Gain, that everybody's just out there to build themselves up and look big and be cool and, you know, be in the bright lights, and anybody who's given that opportunity will jump to it. And obviously, if you're making films as long as he has at the level he is, he's witnessed that left and right. I mean,
it's like, it seems like he has like a preoccupation with like man-children. Like, the Nick Cage character in The Rock is kind of an example of that, where he's kind of immature. He has his record fixation, and then Sean Connery shows up to save the day, kind of like Josh Duhamel in the Transformers movies. And then Pain and Gain is just a bunch of, like, children pretending to be adults. But I haven't seen The Island, and I don't think anyone has, and that stands out to me because I never hear it come up in conversation, and I'm curious now. Like,
I actually kind of want to watch it too because I think it's tied into that too. Because isn't the whole point of the island is just like organ harvesting, right?
It's like organ harvesting or cloning.
Yeah,
Something like that. It was, I think, Ewan McGregor and maybe Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, it was Scarlett Johansson.
I think Michael Clark Duncan was in there too.
Yeah. I remember the ad of him being like drug away and
like tentacle things. And, he was in Armageddon. That's a movie we haven't talked about. Armageddon.
God damn, I always forget about Armageddon.
Well,
Pro America. It was
oil drillers.
King of the White People, Bruce Willis at the time, and
Steve Buscemi, another Coen Brothers actor.
yeah, actually, the oil drillers save America.
Oil drillers save America by going into
and France
space.
blows up.
France blows up. Just casually. France is gone.
The American dream.
Yeah, first victim of the meteor is a black guy. Wow. Michael Bay's fun. In an awful way.
Another one with weird tonal shifts, too.
God. It has some of the highest of emotional highs. Like, I don't want to close my eyes. The whole, like, that... Oh my god, the editing when Bruce Willis sets off the nuke.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the most 90s MTV thing ever. Where it's like, oh, my whole life flashed before my eyes, my daughter, badoosh, Aerosmith music.
Was he gone in 60 Seconds, too, or was that somebody else?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, I feel like he's tied to that somehow, because there's a lot of similarities.
Aesthetically, it's so similar.
And that one actor, too, so like, I always liked him, the old, like, Southern guy, the blonde hair. He's like...
I remember Vinnie Jones was in that.
Yeah, it's like...
I can't remember the old Southern guy, though.
I came in. He's the one who, like, convinces Giovanni Ribisi that Nick Cage isn't a bad guy, and then he was in Armageddon.
You remember Gone in 60 Seconds pretty well. I don't remember it at all. I just remember the end. They're like... Or maybe that was a Fast and Furious movie. I seem to remember a barbecue where like Vinnie Jones speaks and everybody. Yeah. Everybody's like, "Whoa!"
Because he doesn't talk. Well, you have to understand, like that movie. Like I was like a senior in high school when that came out, so that was like
that movie is like the year 2000 bottled.
No, exactly. Like that's when I was like at the perfect like
Nick Cage's like frosted hair and the like I don't know like that Miami like orange oozing sky.
Yeah.
Like all the light flaring.
But that was like also like I said, the car worship thing. Like nowadays it seems like it's kind of a fading thing because just people have less space to work on these things. Like the technology itself is kind of a fading art, you know. And muscle cars and shit, like they're either owned by really wealthy guys now who take them out on the weekend or they're not out and about. Like when I was in high school, like they were still kind of in circulation. In fact, a lot of people, that was the first car you got because you could still work on them.
Yeah.
You know, now it's like that's unheard of. Like now you're getting a shitty Honda, like because it's gonna run for 10 years. Like
easy.
But so like the car culture thing, like with Gone in 60 Seconds, that was the big thing. It was like just so cool. Like it was such an homage to all these crazy car chases from the 70s and things and. But done in a MTV sort of way, so it's not like sitting through the French Connection for 2 hours just to see this.
Or Bullet. But,
yeah, exactly.
But, everybody has Spice Girls like red leather pants and stuff.
Yeah.
But one thing, and it sounds like we're starting to wrap up here.
Oh, for sure.
One detail that we never touched on that perhaps is a discussion for another day is Jerry Bruckheimer. Jerry Bruckheimer is the thread that runs through all of this, who I don't know how much creative influence he has, but it seems like maybe a lot. Because he's the guy, he's the money man.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the money man usually has a lot to say about your product.
I think, especially with Bruckheimer, I think that's so fascinating, because we talked about it a long time ago, but Top Gun 2.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that he held off for so long, and considering going back to that well...
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, the only reason you do that is if you have just a vision. Like, you're not just looking at like these Transformers thing, which literally it's just shit. Like, you just throw it out there because you know you're going to make the money. Like, Top Gun clearly must mean something to him because he held out for so long. And that's an easy cash grab.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's just a matter of like sorting through the scripts, and I just think of like, yeah, like Bruckheimer, like when I think of all the movies he's produced, he's again very tuned into like what middle America likes, and knowing that if you make movies that appeal to that big mass, it'll bleed out, and even people in big cities, you know, come from those areas a lot of the time, and you know, so it's the perfect audience to market your shit towards.
Yeah.
I'll have to go through and think it over, but like I said, just when I think of like Top Gun, Days of Thunder, Gone in 60 Seconds.
Well, what's funny about the first two you mentioned there is that those were both Tony Scott movies.
Yeah.
And Tony Scott's dead now. And
yeah,
his passing, I would think, would kind of put some hiccups in the process there.
That's very true.
It's like, Ridley's still around. Like, but yeah, the question that's running through my head is who. Obviously, like Michael Bay has a voice, he has a flavor, but Jerry Bruckheimer is a common producer across pretty much his entire filmography, and a lot of movies that have a similar flavor, like the National Treasure movies and the Pirates movies, and it makes me wonder, like, how much is coming from each one of these guys. Like, how much is Michael Bay and how much is Bruckheimer?
I think that what it is I think Michael, and based purely, because we don't have insight, but...
No, of course not. This is all speculation.
I get the sense that Bruckheimer's the actual, like, genius when it comes to the vision of what he's trying to build, and I feel like Bay's just that guy who's so confident that he can deliver, that you show up and you say, hey, we're going to do this movie now. You know, so, okay. Because it's going to be on time, it's going to be, you know...
Well,
your actors will be happy and you're going to make money.
You would think it's that kind of working relationship where it's like he's the instrument, where I'm the guy, I'm not the puppet master, but I am the guy I'm the guy letting the dog off the chain, and I trust that he'll know what to do.
Well, and I think also tied to that too, it makes me wonder, like with like the actor relations, like I could picture it being one of those things where Bruckheimer can call up any actor in Hollywood and say like, hey, would you like to be in my movie?
Oh, fuck yes.
And they're going to take the call.
Yeah.
But that's where I feel like with Bay, like maybe that's why he's not as public of a guy, where his whole thing is like, I'll take whoever you give me.
Uh-huh.
And they'll be happy. They'll do their shit because I'm just going to let them be whoever the hell they want. And honestly, like, I wouldn't be shocked if one of the things he does too, and the only reason I believe this is because you mentioned how he's always on time, which is unheard of in the film industry.
Yeah.
I feel like he probably doesn't do a lot of takes.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think for an actor, like, that's a huge thing, because you have to wonder, like I was saying earlier with the Tarantino kind of directors, where everything is so thought out.
Yeah.
And they have like this vision, they're going to do their best to replicate that onto. That must be obnoxious as shit if you're an actor, a well-established actor, who knows what they're doing and who had their own vision of what they're trying to do.
See, I hadn't thought of that.
And now they're going out on it and they're saying like, okay, John Malkovich, you're going to be a CEO of this company or whatever.
Give me your CEO.
Exactly. That's what I really feel like he does with his actors, that because he has such weird ensembles of just so many talented people, and a lot of times in really small roles.
Yeah.
So, like, you know.
Yeah, I bet you're right, and that would be consistent with the stunt aspect of things too.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't afford to do multiple takes of a lot of those, and sometimes it's just not feasible. Like, biggest gasoline explosion in the world. That's not
you get one shot at that.
Yeah, you're not going to do that twice.
But that's also one of those things too, where it's like that's probably why his movies don't feel like they have as much of a depth to them, because
they didn't even have the stuff to edit with.
Yeah, because you're just like the talking points a lot of the time are just that. They're just filler for the big explosion or when the robots appear.
Oh yeah, usually the plots in those movies are explained either in voiceover, like in montage, or Kelsey Grammer sitting in a dark room, probably in voiceover. Like, truthfully, probably ADR dubbed.
And honestly, the last point I'll bring up before we wrap this up, but the conspiracy bro aspect too, of the beginning of each movie, how there's always tied to some like sort of like, you know, it's like in this latest one, there's something with Nazi castles and
Nazis and King Arthur, apparently.
Yeah, something to do with the fucking pyramids in the second one. Yeah. You had the fucking dinosaurs being extinct because of the Transformers.
Yeah. The opening of the fourth one was okay, sure.
Yeah, the moon landing was done because they found an Autobot or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's like that thing. I mean, because in the era we're in,
and
With the fact that Alex Jones
conspiracy bro, oh fuck, they're going, oh man, Nazi gold, space vampires, psychic vampires.
Yeah, all those bros are just.
Is Galvatron gonna get his face torn off? Because apparently Optimus Prime, that's his like move. Like, is he gonna get his face teared off and like Hitler's gonna be in there? Like, it was me the whole time.
Yeah, we'll see about that. That could go a number of ways, but.
Or Decepticons were actually engineered by the Nazis.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Megatron made a deal with the Nazis, like, if I should be frozen in ice, make sure to hide this weapon so I can find it later. Heil Hitler!
Yeah, now that we've gotten to Nazi Decepticons, I think that covers it all.
I apologize, I'm a Christian.
All right, well, I consensus, I think we've given Michael Bay more credit than anybody else who's ever discussed film. So
treat yourself to some garbage. It's not the worst thing in the world for you. It's like McDonald's. It'll kill you like if you consume a lot of it, but okay, never mind. If you have a little bit, it'll be okay.
Yeah, maintain taste for crap. Yeah, that's the American way right there.
Yeah. Have some crap. It's good for you.
All right. Thank you so much for listening.
Genius. Hi, I'm Michael Bay, director of Hollywood hits such as Transformers, and I demand things to be awesome. Awesome, pussycat.